G'day everybody, this is the first one of a 5-part another diorama bookend build. So it's a diorama and also can be a set of bookends. I've done this one for my dad. He really liked the last one that I did, and he's a big John Wayne fan, so he likes westerns. So I have done a whole lot of research, finally found a street scene in the Sheriff's Blackthorn County part of the movie Rio Lobo. So I've watched 3 minutes of the Rio Lobo town scene, I think 10 times now. So I've seen 30 minutes of movie, but only the same 3 minutes. So I've got a lot of pictures of the screenshots from the movie and then other things that I could find online to do with it, and decided to make him both the sheriff's office and the millinery store that's next to it. It took a great deal of figuring and fiddling to work out the exact size. I went through a whole lot of plastic cowboys that I had and decided to make it to fit their scale, so it's still probably 1/32 scale, I suppose. I did have to modify it. It's eyeballing the buildings to know exactly how big they should be, but in hindsight, when I had a look at it, it was probably still a fraction skinnier than it should have been to fit it onto the bookends and make them split where they did. However, it still looks proportional enough. So I started with foam card, which is a foam board that's got a cardboard outside, used for mounting in lots and lots of crafty things, and architect stuff and interior designers use it. I just got it from one of our local art and craft supplies places, and I used the same card that I used to make the church in the other diorama build. This one will, as I said, will be 5 parts, and that's primarily because of me just showing you everything and not wanting to make any of the movies particularly short. I could have had a 3-minute one, trying to get them to break at a spot that just sort of makes sense and doesn't just have you, oh, thanks for not finishing that bit. So if you're not interested in how-tos, wait for the 5th part to get uploaded and just watch the reveal-y bit. In the last video, it will be painting the cowboys and then just some glamour shots of the finished work. But the first couple are building the buildings and doing all the fiddly details on them. So I cut the front of the building, cut the 2 windows in the doorway out of it, and beveled the edges so that I could line up the sides with it and put a bevel on the sides as well. This was mostly successful. I don't know what happened later. I found out that something was out of square, but I did my best at the time, so I have no idea what went wrong with the plan. It seemed to be a okay plan when I did it. Glued it together with normal PVA glue and pinned it in place, and it was the sheriff's office pretty much blocked in and outlined. Plenty of glue around all the seams so that it stayed together. The millinery store, same process. I had a good look at the pictures. It has only one window and a door, and trying to figure out what it was going to be was the same thing, just guessing from the photos. The sheriff's office has its wooden planks, but the millinery store is made out of bricks, so probably clay bricks. So when I decided to make the process of building them, although they're starting out the same, the sheriff's office is going to get a whole lot of weatherboardy bits stuck on the outside to make it more timbery, but the foam board for the millinery store has to look like brickwork, and clay bricks at that. So again, the size of the figures suggested the size for the building, and I used the doorway that I'd already done from the sheriff's office as a fixed thing. This is what I'm doing here, is drawing the lines that are going to be the brickwork. So these are all the horizontal lines. And unfortunately, the day that I was doing the brickwork, I thought this would be a really good speeded up thing where here I was drawing 1,000,000 bricks. But the day that I went to do it, the video camera was full, so I put it onto the computer, and while it was doing that, we got a blackout. So I had literally nothing else I can do, so the rest of me drawing the bricks in, and I drew every single brick join, so all the rest of the bricks happens off camera, and you'll just see a couple of photos that in a minute when I get there. But the process was so worth it. I was really thrilled. So it's just using a pen that doesn't have any ink. I went through and scored, used it to press into the cardboardy bit and just draw all of the brick lines in, including the engaged bricks under the windowsill. I just measured out where the windows and door was going to go and made sure I did up to them. A little bit of fiddling after they got cut out, but mostly it was just drawing the bricks in place. And it took, I think, for the top and the sides, it was probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to draw all the bricks in. But after I'd painted them and picked some of the bricks out with different colours and given it a wash, it came out so well that I was very, very glad. So that was shot in the only light in the house, which was coming in through a side window of the blockwork. So I drew all of those in and then cut out the doorway and the window from that, and that was ready to glue together, which is what this next thing is. I just, after I'd drawn all the bricks, I glued it together. I also made sure that the bricks lined up on the corners. There was a little bit of filling because trying to cut a 45-degree bevel on a bit of foam board with a scalpel freehand is damn nigh impossible unless you've got a beveled cutter, which I don't. And so it was filling with a bit of filler and sorting it out to try and make it be very square, and then just pushing in the filler, pushing the grout lines and the brick lines back in. So after I'd made both of the buildings, I had to measure up the windows and the doors so that I could cut out with cardboard the windowsills and door jambs, and that's what you saw me doing a minute ago. This is just cutting the timber posts that are going to form the veranda of the sheriff's office, and the construction of all of the beams and the bearer that goes across the front to support the rafters is just on a small scale, pretty much what happens in real life when you're building a house or a building. So it looked quite looks quite the part when it's all painted up and done. These are a bit of timber that's light like balsa. I think I've mentioned it before. It was just from a tree that we cut down on my property, and then I milled it up a little bit and put it through a thicknesser, and I've ended up with some small off-cutty bits which I've used here. So that was gluing that together and letting it dry. Then I needed to make the front veranda. Once I had the veranda on there, I could gauge the distances. Again, all of the things that I've done in this thing have been eyeballed to look the part for the building that's on screen. But if you pay attention closely, there are a few. It is out a little bit. So it is what it is. The show in the movie, there is a little bit of a slope to the street, and I seriously thought about putting some more foam board onto the bookends to do it, but I in the end decided against it because it's a lot of mucking around to try and join the edges up. So I just placed the sheriff's office on top of the foam board. I'd already allowed for foam board underneath it, but I'd put the milliner's office slightly behind it so that the decking rises up the building without the street having to slope down. In the movie it does as well, and I'm quite happy with the result. It looks, when you see the final thing, I was happy enough, and my dad was pretty stoked. It's ended up with, I gave it to him for Christmas, and it's ended up with a pride of place in his hallway at the moment, with one book in between it. He did go for the using them as bookends option, but he's got them both not turned around being bookends. They're still facing the front, so they're a diorama with the book in the middle of it. So once I had got the building basically cut out, then it was just start doing all of the panelling that's on the side. So that was just getting cardboard and paper, because it only needed to be the thickness of what a board the boards would be out the front of the building, and proportionately the thick card did that. The building in the movie actually has 2 more posts that are on the building, and since I didn't want to cut them into the foam card and put more sticks, actual sticks in there, I had to pack out the edges of the building to look like the posts that are supporting the frame from the movie. That only required 2 bits of card cut there on the corner and glued in place, and when it painted up it looks like the others. The windows and the doors, I made 3 of each so that I could make I could glue 2 panels together to give me rigidity, and then after it's painted, glue a little bit of Perspex plastic, once again saved from toy boxes with Star Wars figures and things that have come, and glue it in between, but I wait till I paint it to do that. So I glued the first 2 together. The door for the Sheriff's office it's a colonial sort of a door, so it had little panels in it. The Milner's office was a bit more like a barn door, like a stable door that has the cross members on it. So I had used my tricky cutter machine once I'd measured all the sizes up for all the door jambs and the windows and everything, I loaded it into the cutter machine and let it cut all of those little bits out, and then glued them together so that the door to the Sheriff's office has a profile, and the door to the Milner's office also has a profile. That's a what do you call it? The profile you can feel, so, and still looks like it's part of what you had to do. Because of the extra curvy bit on the top of the Sheriff's office, I had to hand trace and cut the piece that fits the top of it, but most of the rest of the palings that work as joiners on the building were just straight cuts, sort of like the boards for the veranda. So there was cutting a bunch of pieces of card to be the right width, and then just trimming them as I needed them so that they all went into place. It was a lot easier to get a 45 degree on the cardboard trim than it was onto the foam board, and in the end it's come up looking pretty nice once it got painted. So the end of this one, I think, is the board's starting to go on, but for the sake of time, because this one is already 15.5 minutes doing that, I've split the construction between this one and the next video, so you can watch as I glue more palings on and do the decking across the front in the next video. The last video, the 5th one that gets uploaded, will just be painting the cowboys and the glamour shots, and even then it's still 8 or 9 minutes long. So the next 3 after this one, 1, 2, 3 and 4, are all the construction phases of the building. This was building the little gate that's in between the Sheriff's office and the next store on the opposite side to the Milner's. So it was just the same thing, cardboard building a fence, cutting a little 45 degree off the top of each of the weatherboards, of the top of the fence palings. And like I said, the strips that were the joins in between the weatherboards on the side of the building were all very straight cuts, and it was just a matter of having a whole heap of pieces of cardboard already cut and then just cutting them to length and gluing them on so that they all lined up. So as it came together, it was looking more and more like a timbery sort of a structure, and when it painted up, with a bit of dry brushing and things, it's come up really smart. So later on, when I'm painting it, there's some pictures that show you that bit. So we're coming to the end of this first video, and you can see the Sheriff's office is starting to get its detail in. Like I said, if you like it, watch them all if you're interested in how things are done. The entirety of this build, except for the cowboys, was scratch built. There's no 3D fabricated parts or anything. That's just because I don't have it. But I hope you've enjoyed watching this one. If you have, good. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Have a great day.